All right, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about a very important issue that our businesses face today, and that's of course ransomware. So, needless to say, we all, see the same news stories. We all read the same headlines of business after business getting hit, and it's still astounding to me that even given the prevalence that we see of these ransomware attacks today, that these attacks are predicted to hit businesses and our devices every 2 seconds, which is astounding by 2031. So, needless to say, the need for solutions that can help protect our data, protect our businesses from these sort of threats, and help boost our cyber resilience, it's more important today than it ever has been in the past. So, that's what our groundbreaking solution with Commvault is designed to help our customers do. We firmly believe what we've co-developed and co-engineered with Commvault really sets a new standard for data protection, giving our customers unmatched recovery speeds, really powerful and innovative data security features, which Paul and Mike are going to be walking us through today, but with the highest levels of efficiency from both a cost and performance and manageability standpoint that we firmly believe simply does not exist elsewhere in the market today. All these things together are combined. All of our joint efforts are designed to ensure that our customers can both withstand and recover near instantly from cyber threats, with minimal disruption. So without further ado, I'm Michael Pacheco, Senior Product Marketing Manager with Vast Data. It's a pleasure to be joined by our partner, Paul D'Adamo.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Paul. I'm the Solution Director in Commvault's Global Partner Organization. I've been at Commvault 11 years and had the benefit of working with hundreds of customers. And I'm always amazed that for all the customers we've worked with, we've never really encountered two that are alike. Excited to be here, excited to be talking about Vast, about Commvault, about security. Security is something near and dear to me. I got to work on my first ransomware recovery about 7 years ago, where one of our customers lost 15,000 servers. I'm amazed at how far we've come. I really wish a lot of the capabilities we have today were available then, and I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you, Paul. And of course, we have Mike Zola, Global Director of Technical Data Protection with Vast Data.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so Mike Zola, been at Vast now a little over 2 years, spent over last 2 decades in the data protection space here, working with a lot of our enterprise level customers. And data now is one of the most pristine or most important pieces to any customer's environment. And protecting that and being able to get it back when needed is probably one of the best things that Commvault and Vast has done together here to kind of orchestrate that. Paul, why don't I turn it over to you to get us kicked off? I mean, obviously, guys, throughout this whole webinar, I want you guys to click on that Q&A button, ask questions at any time. We'll jump right in and answer them. We'll either answer them as we're going, or we'll hold it for the end and we'll answer some questions at the end as well. So, Paul, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off.
Thanks, Mike. So we want to start off by looking at some trends. And while the trends kind of look familiar and may see the same, the different themes that underlie these actually keep changing and evolving. So when you think of a hybrid cloud, years ago we saw those customers, the explorers, when cloud was first coming about, they got excited, they put on their space goggles and said, we're going to the cloud, we're leaving the data center. And it's amazing, we actually still see customers today that haven't reached out to the cloud yet. They haven't started moving their data there. A lot of folks are attracted by the pay for what you're using, scale is needed, unlimited power and efficiency of the cloud. Some realize they have some really sensitive data and they don't want to take those steps yet. They're not at that point where they want to start moving their data off-prem into other locations. Ultimately, what we're seeing our customers, those that go to the cloud, those that start bouncing between different cloud locations, is they land in some kind of a hybrid landscape. And for the most part, they become hybrid by accident. They aren't exactly out there doing this by design. And over the last few years, while they're doing this exploration and trying all the different locations and moving their data around, data is exploding. Our consulting service team, they'd sit with customers doing architecture design, and they would ask the customer, what kind of data do you have? Where's that data? And they'd start building the infrastructure to help protect that data wherever it is. And there became to be a point in time where customers couldn't really tell us what data they had. We realized they started using different solutions for different data sets, and they had all the different locations, and it became very hard to identify what data was out there. When I first started at Commvault, it was common to see an enterprise customer with a couple hundred terabytes. Now we're seeing commercial customers that could be sitting on a petabyte of a single type of workload. So while this is going on, data is growing, trying all the different locations, ransomware is coming up. We've all heard the stories. I don't think anyone's ever denied the impact that ransomware could have on them, but I do think that until you've gone through recovery, you may not really appreciate what kind of impact it could have or how to really prepare for it. At this point in time, a lot of the companies we've talked to have faced some kind of an attack. A lot of the different admins we've talked to have helped with the recovery. In the olden days, the attackers would go in and encrypt production data, and we knew we had the backup copy as something that we can recover from. That was your safety net. Today, those actors are going after the backups because they realize that backup stream is the one spot where all their data exists at any one point in time. And they're not just encrypting the data. They're threatening to delete it. They're threatening to expose it. And as hard as that is to manage and to maintain, you also have all these new requirements, NIS2 and DORA, depending on where you're located or what industry you're in. And you're really bound to being able to prove your resilience, to prove that you're worthy of maintaining this data. As Mike, you said, this is pristine stuff. It's very important. And a lot of the companies we help with recoveries, A, they're terrified of going through this, but B, they're afraid to actually divulge that they had that attack. Attacks are starting to impact brand image. It's starting to impact customer perception, especially when you think of financial services and healthcare and all those industries with really sensitive information. There's legal and financial impact even beyond all the perception and the things that could do to your customers or your supply chain. I think the scariest thing that I've ever read about was out in Finland, where a hacker went in and took 33,000 therapy patient records and started pinging those patients directly saying, pay up or I'm going to start putting this stuff online. So businesses, individuals alike, everyone's getting impacted. Then you throw AI into the mix, and AI is that next panacea. It's the big promise. While everything's growing and everything's in a hybrid environment, AI is supposed to make us a little more efficient, a little more precise in our decision making. So even though we have this complex reality, it's the expectation that we're going to be able to manage and sustain this. Unfortunately, the bad actors are using AI as well, and we're experiencing customers who, they're using these pretty nasty payloads that they're dropping in a customer environment that can go off in minutes, or they can leave them sitting there for months, and they're using polymorphic attacks, so the signatures are changing. And we at Commvault, we always say we have to use AI to fight AI. So a lot of things going on. It's all doom and gloom, but that's why we're here today, because we have some pretty great solutions to talk about.
It is interesting too, Paul. I mean, if you look at that hybrid chaos, right, in the world changing, if you go back as little as maybe 3-4 years ago, you're looking at people saying, oh, well, I have a tool set for on-prem, and I have a whole nother tool set for in my cloud, and I have another tool set for this cloud. I mean, the complexity and the technical debt that you incur by trying to create those processes and then try to keep them alive. I mean, I think that's one of the big things that Commvault's done over the last couple of years is I can manage my data in any one of those locations the same way as I create my policies correctly, right? And that's one of the bigger changes I've seen from a software perspective in the industry today.
Absolutely. The workload coverage, which we'll also get into later on, it's really important. When you're going through recovery and even planning for recovery and trying to understand what that process is going to look like, orchestrating multiple tools makes it a little harder to do. And some of those tools are more effective than others. So when you can start consolidating onto a single tool, it does make it a lot easier to prepare, a lot easier to actually execute that recovery.
So can we do a quick poll real quick? Can we
Yes.
pull up a poll? So guys, we want to kind of understand from the people on the phone here, what is your biggest challenge, right? What are you facing when you're trying to get to that cyber resilience component? Like, where are we today? And what keeps you up at night, right? Like, where are your pain points? And you can see here, I see some requests coming in, but I want to know kind of where you are and if we're struggling, if we think we got it all figured out, like, let us know. I mean, when I look at some of the stuff coming in, we're starting to see the top two are around protecting against ransomware and cyber attacks. And which I think we're going to cover a lot of that today. And then ensuring rapid data recovery, that's the next one, which is good. And I think the third one on that list out of the four that came in high is going to be managing those storage costs. I think all of that's relevant, right? When you look at, you can do anything at a cost, right? Like technology is a great thing because I can have 97 copies and I can manage them all, and my cost starts to skyrocket up. Paul, is this kind of in line with what you guys are seeing as well? I mean, across the industry, I mean, to me, these top three are the ones people are really caring about. And that last one, I don't think people have enough information on today to understand that they really do need to simplify the workflow for recovery.
I fully agree. We've been doing a lot of different studies, and responses vary depending on whether folks have actually gone through recovery or not. And what we're finding is those that have gone through recoveries, they really start to prioritize that recovery time for specific workloads, especially, and making sure they understand what is that critical data they need back first, so they have as little impact as possible.
You stop sharing. Do I stop sharing? How's that go away? Share results. Stop sharing.
You got it. You got it.
Close. And then
You're gonna
there we
say,
go.
So we're going to look at a slide. This is a busy slide, but we'll talk through it. A lot of stuff on Commvault. What is Commvault? How are we approaching cyber resilience? First off, from a resilience perspective, what we categorize that as is really resilience of your data and resilience of your business. So if your data is impacted, your business can keep going on. We're not just dreaming up different features and products and things that we want to put out there. We actually anchor the tools we're creating to different frameworks that security professionals are using. So we anchor to the NIST framework, so we have more focus, and that the tools we're developing are something that'll be adopted by those cross-functional teams. There's really three pillars that we can categorize all of our features in, and that's where in the center cloud there, you'll see those. There's risk, readiness, and recovery. From a risk perspective, what we look at that as is really understanding the type of data you have and being able to classify your data. And we do have those tools in the product. One we call risk analysis, that we can analyze live data or backup data, file systems, databases, VMs, and look for sensitive information. So as customers are starting to pull that thread of whatever tools they use most and finding out what's behind those tools, what VMs, what databases, what systems, they can start to understand these are the ones I might need to have back first so we can mitigate any overall impact. The readiness pillar has to do with that long laundry list of capabilities and security features that we have in the product. When you start thinking of zero trust and those types of tools like multi-factor authentication, so if someone hits the red button and tries to delete something, whether intentionally or by accident, other people have to say, yes, these actions can actually go through. There are anomaly detections, whether looking at operational anomalies or file anomalies, like the file count that you have in your environment or the size of the files, or even looking at all the different extensions and if those are changing, or even backup anomalies and the frequency of backups and encryptions. It has to do with the canary files and all the deception technology that we have available to deploy in an environment that become tripwires for any bad actors. Because what they tend to do is they get into an environment and they start exploring. They may not execute the attack right away. They start doing ping tests, seeing what responds, start looking for that mission critical data and planning out their attack. And as they touch these tripwires, alarms go off. We start collecting information on them. We start alerting the authorities, just like the movies, everyone sweeps in. It includes your other features like air gapping, being able to send data to different sites and making sure it's totally isolated copy, or even immutability. Immutability really started to come up in the last few years, where customers realized it's great to have some data offsite, great to have some stuff in the cloud, but we also really want to have some data on-prem that can come back really quick, that can't be tampered with. And having that layered approach becomes really effective. On the recovery pillar, that's really looking more at, there was a point in time where your backend storage target for your storage target for backups used to have to be able to take the backups within a certain window, but now a lot of our customers are prioritizing that recovery capability and not just being able to restore data really quickly, but making sure you're restoring clean data and having all the products around that actually make that happen as well. On the left side of the page, it's really just to represent being able to, as you said earlier, Mike, covering all the different workloads in all the different locations. You want to protect all the modern things. You want to protect all the containers. You want to protect all the latest hypervisors, but you also want to be able to protect the legacy stuff. You know, we still have customers with AS400 and other things in the environment that are just as important. And beyond being able to protect that, the way we see this is we now have the capability of orchestrating all the data between all the different locations. And where this really gets effective is in capabilities that we've had in the product for years, like being able to convert hypervisors. So we have that unique capability of taking, say, VMware, for example, restoring it to another location. And when it gest there, you've got Hyper-V or Nutanix. And these are capabilities that were never really highlighted or discussed. And, you know, bring up topics like Broadcom and everything's going on with VMware. Suddenly our customers are feeling locked into different environments or different tools, have flexibility, and they can settle into that proper hybrid landscape. On the right, there's a whole bunch of logos, and they're names that you may not associate with Commvault, but Commvault has a lot of different partners in our ecosystem, and we leverage these tools to augment our capabilities. So we use products like Databricks to help us identify that sensitive information. We have a great relationship with Entrust, who are pioneers when it comes to post-quantum cryptography, because encryption is such an important thing. You know, we work with CyberArk for those zero trust principles, and we're using Avira AI to help detect those AI attacks in the customer environment. So these aren't things we charge our customers for. These are things in the product that are built in, that are just there enhancing our capabilities. And Mike, you mentioned having a single pane of glass. The way I like to see it with Commvault is we've been working on a single string of API since before I was born. Not that long, but still. And it's benefited us in a few ways. When you have a single code base, suddenly every button in Commvault becomes very easy to automate. And all the different partner integrations are great because it's easier to integrate with a single code where we can share information with them and they can share it back with us. And we can start to automate the response to some of that information we're getting. And when it comes to AI, we're really just scratching the surface of where we're at today, but we're really well positioned to kind of take this to a whole other level. Now, on this slide, Mike, I want you to get into the storage part. Before we do, let me just explain the Commvault infrastructure so the folks get it, for those that aren't familiar with it. What we have here represented is two different locations. And a lot of our customers have a couple sites. They might have a couple remote sites out at the edge. And in each of these boxes, you have a few different components. One, you have a bunch of what we call clients, different types of data protect, your file systems, your databases, your containers. And from a Commvault infrastructure perspective, the first component I want to call it is the CommServe. That's our control plane. When we install Commvault on that CommServe, we're installing a SQL database, just a bunch of ones and zeros that tell the environment what to do. It doesn't have to be a heavy server. It could be a physical server. It could be a VM. And importantly, it's not connected to everything else. You can have it in the same location, but you can also have this in a different network layer in a different site altogether, keeping that protected. Now, all we have to do to keep that CommServe available is make sure we're protecting that database. So we can back it up. We can have another CommServe that we do a live sync capability to and make sure that database is available both sides. We can have a copy in the cloud. And when we need to start a recovery, that's the first component that we want stood up. The media agents, those are the heavy lifters. Those are the servers that actually grab that data from the customer environment and move it to the backend storage. There's a couple components on there. We have an index cache that tells us what data we've written where. We have a deduplication database that tells us about what blocks have been written so we can do incremental backups when we need to. And importantly, we can write to any type of storage. And like I said, restores are becoming very important, and the type of storage you write to is becoming a very hot topic when we sit with customers. You can do your tapes, you can do your disk, but when we start doing stuff with VAS, that's where we're taking things to a completely different level because of the capabilities that VAS brings to the table. So Mike, do you want to go through a couple of the details on the VAS as the backend target?
Definitely. Thanks, Paul. So if we look down at the bottom, we'll notice that we have two protection storage pools, one in site one and one in site two, and they don't look exactly the same. It's mainly because from our DAYS architecture, our disaggregated shared everything architecture, it allows me the ability to either scale performance or capacity independently of each other. So on the left-hand side, I have two what we call compute boxes and 3 data stores. Those are actually going ahead and processing the data in site one. And in site two, I'll have 3 compute boxes over 3 data stores. Because as you can see here, I'm doing a little extra work from remote offices. I can create a single deduplication pool, present that out to Commvault to write into. And today we're showing in this slide, because it's very high level, right? We're showing media agents. We're going to get into how we can actually bypass media agents still leverage them for their dedupe databases and make sure we minimize data and so on, but optimize for hundreds and thousands of clients to be able to read and write straight into VAST, controlled from that CommServe kicking off those backups.
And something that I see is huge. The performance that VAST offers, we're going to get into that and just talk about that in a minute, but really the scalability is massive. You know, the non-disruptive scaling that VAST is offering, when our customers don't know what data they have, they may not know what footprint to deploy for. And so when they can actually get the product in the environment, start using it, start protecting data, and as more workloads become available, seamlessly scale, that's a huge capability that's often overlooked.
Awesome. Oh, next slide. So first, we're going to start talking about capacities and how Wormlock typically impacts your environment. But coming together with VAST and Commvault, we've kind of removed this, I'll call it a objection or an obstacle, right? For some of our customers that have hundreds of petabytes of data, and then they think about enabling object lock, and they think about the penalties on the backend storage system that would actually incur. To go through this slide, I'm going to take a little bit of time on this, because really what we've done is Commvault's done a lot with their S3 interface, right? So writing via S3 on-prem to perform an S3 storage gives you a lot of security benefits, right? So Commvault will take that data and process it and chunk it up and do its deduplication and store 8 meg objects down into their storage system that they're writing to. Now, to do that, what typically used to happen is we would go ahead and write via things like NFS or CIFS or SMB, whatever you want to call it. I'm old school, so I'll call it CIFS. But when we would write traditionally, we would open up a stream and keep it open throughout the whole backup. What Commvault's done with their S3 protocol does a couple really good things in this solution. One, it only opens a session to write the object, 8 megs, and then closes a session, then starts a new one. That obviously keeps the session not alive as long, so it's harder to hack into. The other thing it does is it allows us to spread the workload evenly across the cluster without having to do any tuning or how many streams am I using or so on, because it's going to open and we're going to load balance those across the VAST system. So as data traditionally comes in, and you'll see the term up there, DDB, that's Commvault's dedupe database. So over your first 28 days, Commvault's going to get, and these are very conservative numbers, right? So we're going to say they're going to get 60% reduction. We're going to store 1.25 petabytes. And VAST with similarity will actually store slightly less data, right? Another 1.7 to 1 to give you around 730 terabytes stored. Now, that's your first 28 days. Now, if I were to go ahead and enable object lock for 28-day retention, what happens is I'm now going to seal that dedupe database on day 28, right? I seal the dedupe database because, guys, remember, I just wrote a whole bunch of 8 meg objects down into VAST. I'm not going to go and look every day for the millions of objects that I want to go ahead and prune. That's like a whole bunch of compute power that's not needed inside the environment, right? And I also want to make sure I have all my data available to me in the event that I want to recover. So I seal the dedupe database, which means I now need to process my data again. Traditionally, I have to size for about 2x the capacity when I enable Wormlock, but because of similarity, I'm only storing another like 2 or 3%. This now brings down my total cost of ownership to enable cyber resilient backup copies, right? Worm-locked capabilities, so that when I hit steady state on day 57, I initiate the bulk delete command of DDB1, and I am now running off to the races and making sure that I'm secure in my data path. Nothing can be deleted out of turn. Nobody can get onto the VAST system and actually start deleting my objects. And Commvault's controlling that through its Wormlock policy. Paul, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think you covered it really well. I think in general, when we write data in Commvault, we're writing a backup copy, we're writing a dedupe database. And really, when we lock things up, we can't age that first copy until we're in and around the third one starting. So for all those customers that we have that are picking and choosing what data they want immutable, this opens it up. This means you have a lot more data you can keep immutable in the storage on-prem and be able to recover a lot quicker. So it's huge, huge capability that we can't offer elsewhere.
And I think this goes back to your other point. We don't know what data is that important yet,
Yep.
right? So if I can do it for all my data with no penalty, why wouldn't I?
Yep.
Right. And now I get that flexibility to go ahead and do that across my estate. We also look at a traditional architecture. So I want to kind of walk through this a little bit and kind of walk through what we do here. So we have clients obviously inside of an environment. We're going to bring in the CommServe, right? The brains of the operations. We're going to have a media agent that's going to do dedupe, and I'm going to have some size of a vast cluster. Now, traditional backup, I'm going to write through that media agent straight down in to what I'm controlling right now is a VIP pool that's spread across these two compute nodes for performance. Now, remember, in this scenario, my backup or my recovery is going to go back through that media agent. But what Commvault's also done is created this storage accelerator direct capability, which now means I can go straight from my client into a vast system, sending my metadata for recovery purposes, but also checking that dedupe database so I don't have to send everything again, and optimizing the backup path down into vast. My recovery path doesn't need to check the DDB, right? So my recovery path is going to go straight from vast back to my client. So in the event, back to that same theme of, man, I wish I knew everything about my data. If I now need to do a massive recovery, I can go directly from my high performance vast system back to my client and recover in place.
Yep.
Now,
And we've played with this in a lab just for fun. We haven't published any numbers because we don't have a formal performance testing lab, but we were easily hitting 130 terabyte plus an hour restores just in this small lab that we had. And we were limited in speed by the storage we're actually recovering the data to. So what's possible, we don't know yet. Hoping to have some stuff that we can actually publish and share with everyone sometime soon. The other thing I'd call out too is when it comes to those media agents, we size those based on the amount of data we're protecting. When you're doing the storage accelerator, because the data is not flowing through the media agent, you're just doing that indexing, the deduplication, you can pretty much double the amount of data you can protect with each server. So our extra large media agent, on average, you're going to be protecting about 500 terabytes. You do accelerator, you're looking about a petabyte per server, which is phenomenal.
yeah, and it really allows you, if you're an existing Commvault customer replacing your backend with VAST, to leverage those media agents that you're already using and maybe reduce that footprint, right? Or if you're new to Commvault and VAST, now you can optimize on original deployment. So what I'm showing here is one side. This is my production landscape, right? I have the ability to go ahead and bring in and do separated isolation for dev and QA, right? Maybe that's a different network, different IP scope. I have a different storage accelerator direct client writing into another media agent for metadata. I have this capability now to separate my workloads. And for those on the phone, we could actually do this with different encryption at rest keys per tenant or per workload as well on the back end, right? So we have that flexibility. And then Commvault gives a great capability for those databases or larger things that I know I need or mission critical. I have this ability to live sync, right? So I have warm standbys of some of this data that I'm backing up, say every 15 minutes, just sitting there waiting to be recovered in the event that I lost my production system, right? And it's in its native format and it's ready to just be imported and go. Traditionally, right, this is what we look at as my production data center. I have that ability to, in the event that I want to, as you see this animation happen again, in the event that I want to go ahead and extend or give more performance, maybe because I did a Patch Tuesday event and now I know I have more changes in my prod, I can go ahead and dynamically increase the amount of compute resources I'm giving for my backups or recoveries without having to change anything in Commvault, right? So this is just floating a VIP over. This allows me now to do tens of petabytes in a single storage pool. Give me the capability to have no penalty for object lock, as we already discussed. Was covered directly from VAST, so I don't have to size media agents for restore. And all of this is a single namespace. Our largest customer today has 466 petabytes in a single dedupe namespace in their data center, right? Going across multiple generations of VAST hardware, being written to from all different types of applications.
And Mike, I think you're showing the full package here. Like there's a lot of customers today, like I said, they don't know what they need. They don't know what type of data they have. They don't know some of the requirements on how that needs to be protected. They're discovering that as they go. This is all one product that could start in one spot and start to open up to all these capabilities. I know our team, when we're testing with VAST, we're always surprised when it's literally we plug in and we're going. There's no unique configurations or anything really special here. This is just a phenomenal target that we haven't been able to experience before.
Yeah, and it makes it so you don't have to traditionally, when you look at speed of a backup target, you say, oh, that's only for this. And we can do it in an economy of scale that you could do it across everything and not have to segment your data, because you may not know what you need until you actually have that mass recovery need.
Yep.
Now, this gives me I'll call it the protection landscape to go ahead and protect my data. But now I have the flexibility to create that as my production data center. I can simply add a couple compute nodes into this estate, and I can physically connect them to different switches. This will give me the capability to start creating an isolated recovery area where I have a different authentication source, where I can then bring in my Commvault components in my isolated room. I can then start doing things like threat scan, scanning my data for known vulnerabilities that Commvault can actually do for me. And then I can bring in production side application compute where I can actually do real life application testing within this isolated recovery. This can be used for cyber attacks and cyber events. It can also be used for QA test dev application upgrades. We're running off of a high performant backend storage system that's used for AI and HPC workloads, and an economy that I can leverage it for data protection, where now I can leverage this isolated recovery to really run my applications, validate things are good, and now I'm doing it with all of my data. If you think about it, if we go from the top to bottom in the story, I'm backing up data. I'm using Commvault's wormlock. I'm backing up to the VAST system. It's being stored. I can also use indestructible snapshots periodically to do like a belts and suspenders like approach. I can then automate the capability to bring a view of that locked, worm-locked container, bring it over here with different read-write capabilities, present it back into this automated CommServe environment for threat scanning, application testing, and validation. This gives me the components to be truly cyber resilient and auditable in the event that I want to audit my cyber capabilities. And I'll pause there for a second, Paul, if I missed anything.
No, I think that's great. You mentioned threat scanning. I do want to call that out because there is a capability in Commvault where, as we're backing up the data, we have an index server. We just recover a subset of files there and start scanning it. And we look for entry, look for anything that can detect any type of ransomware in line with the backup. No operational overhead. That's a massive capability that's giving us a lot more insight proactively that there might be something going on in the environment. So the fact that we can do all this stuff in VAST, huge. Having that isolation is key and a key puzzle piece to make all this happen.
Yeah, and most of our customers stop here. Right? They go, oh, I've tested, oh, I've validated, oh, I have a good plan. And the struggle then becomes is, we all know cyber events are going to happen. We've put everything in place, so we'll still have our data available. Now the question is do I have the plan to get my infrastructure, my data center, my company back up and running after an attack? right? And now what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we have all the data, we can isolate it, we can validate we have the right copy. Where do I recover to? Right. And that's what most people forget is, oh, geez, now I need a place to recover my data. I'd love to go back to production, but that's locked down. They're still doing forensics. I don't know if I got everything, but I still want my environment up and running.
And it may not just be forensics. The reality is when it comes to insurance, a lot of folks, they can't get rid of that data from pre-attack for insurance purposes. So they're really locked in. You mentioned that it's that forensic tape that goes around the environment at that point of the disaster.
And that's the struggle, right? I mean, you have this traditional environment where I have some database stuff up here, I have some VMs, and I go ahead and I create buckets for each, right? And then I initiate my backups, and I've done everything I was talking about on the other slide. Now, in the event that there's a disaster, I have the flexibility now to create a new view and tell Commvault to recover those VMs to an NFS data store. Oh my gosh, it's on Vast, right? And then I have the ability to do the same thing and bring those into ESX in their native format. I could do the same thing for the database, bring back the LDF, MDF files, the database files, and so on, bring those back from Commvault native format into database native format and attach them and import them into the database. And because of similarity, taking that conversion from proprietary backup format that's locked with Wormlock and putting it into, in the first case, VMware native format with VMDKs and VMX files, now I'm only consuming about 3% more space, which means I can now run my infrastructure with 3% more capacity at scale while I'm getting other things back up and running, have Commvault start protecting those things while they're running. And then in the event that my forensic team and my CISO comes back and says, okay, we're all good, I can storage vMotion back to VMs. I can plan a backup and restore back to prod for my database. That will be a scheduled event. And I can go on my way of, hey, I kept my environment up and running and I'm running my business. So this is...
You make it sound so easy. It's amazing.
Oh, it always is. It's always easy on a slide, Paul.
No. I think in summary, what I'm excited. I like I said, the stuff we're doing with Vast is not something that you see. I really don't think there's two companies that come together and can offer this type of solution. Between Commvault and the depth of the cyber resilience features that we have in the product, when it comes to the performance, the scale, and all the other unique capabilities, the isolation that Vast is bringing to the table, and that broad workload coverage, it really is that solution that you can drop in any location and grow as you start learning more about your data, as your environment starts expanding.
Yeah, so this is great. Mike, I don't know if we want to open it up for questions at this time. Do we have any questions that we need to answer?
Yeah,
Mike?
thank you, gentlemen. That was an awesome presentation. Yes, it looks like we have a couple of questions. I think maybe earlier you talked about data classification. So maybe this is to you, Paul. How does the solution handle data classification to help us prioritize and protect data against ransomware?
Yeah, great question. I think in general, first and foremost, you need to know what's out there. And that's what our analytic capabilities do. We can scan the backups, we can scan your live data. We're going out and our tools will actually identify, is there passport information out there? Are there social security numbers? Are there SIN numbers? Are there password files? It actually goes out and identifies where those files are, where they reside, if they're within a compliant in the right zone. And we can help orchestrate the movement of that data and then determine how that data needs to be protected. So first and foremost, you do need to have a good understanding of the type of data you have. Sounds easy, it's getting a lot more complicated these days. So having those capabilities is the first step. And honestly, we have a consulting engagement where we sit down with customers. That's the first question. You know, A, do you know what your requirements are? And B, do you know what type of data you have to apply those requirements to?
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. And it looks like we have another question. We have DR runbooks for business.
Say that again, Mike? You cut out there. You're on mute.
Can you guys still hear me?
Now
I
you're
can
back.
now.
You got
Yep, you're back.
Of course, as luck would have it, I have 3 monitors going on and they just all shut off like a little power surge thing. So, yep, I lost my screen. So I actually can't see the question any longer.
I think the question was with regards to runbooks. Extremely important. It takes time to create those. It's manual effort. You do want to sit down and take that time to understand, what are the steps to actually, what are the steps to do the recovery, and B, what are those processes? A lot of our customers fell into that trap of they regularly tested, they didn't have runbooks, or the runbooks they had were in those systems they lost. And they're useless at that point. They didn't have a physical copy. So you definitely want to take that time. You do want to make sure they're available, and you do want to make sure you know how to access them when the time comes, and that you use those for testing so that you go through those steps, you see them taking place, and you can execute as efficiently as possible. I'm always amazed at things that actually the lessons learned as we go through the recoveries. We've had the customers who had to create Gmail accounts for their executives so they can communicate with their staff. We've had the customers who ran their storage at a certain capacity, and Mike, when you start talking about being able to recover without that added capacity, that's huge. Because they aren't really expecting what those compliance regulations are, or what they're going to be bound for from an insurance perspective or from an audit perspective.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Paul. I think a lot of the details get overlooked when we say, "Oh, I want cyber resilience," and it is very detail oriented, right?
Yep.
So I think between Commvault and VAS, we do this with customers all the time together. If you're a customer out there and you're thinking like, "Hey, this sounds great. Like, where do I start?" I think you reach out to your Commvault and VAS representatives. We'll get in the room together. We'll do a workshop and try to understand first, to Paul's point, the classification of your data and what matters, any regulatory things that you have associated with that data, and then come up with a program that says, okay, we're going to start here and we're going to go on this journey to get here, and what that's going to look like over that implementation cycle, and how you can go back to your business and say, yes, we're secure and we have that plan for recovery.
And a lot of it is translating those regulation requirements into what we do. A lot of folks get those rules and regulations and they say, okay, what does that mean from a job perspective, from a retention perspective, and making sure that we are meeting those requirements, and that you have a way to audit that and bring it back to the team and show them that.
So if you look at the screen here, if anybody wants to scan that QR code, that'll bring you up to our high level like solution brief on how we bring these two products together. We do have some detailed documentation of how we set these two things up together. And obviously, Paul and I and our teams are more than willing to sit down and do workshops with anybody as a follow-up. So if there's no other questions, and I don't see any in the chat, I would like to thank everybody for taking the time today, talking with Paul and I. Paul, thanks for joining us today. I thought this was great. Always great to educate our customers on different components and really bringing a enterprise class solution together to help solve a problem that's probably hitting everybody in the industry right now. Right. So it's kind of this universal capability with Commvault's ability to look at every data set, manage it and control it, and us to be able to store it efficiently enough and give you the performance you need to go ahead and recover it at a whim. I think it's the best two things coming together. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day. If you have other follow-up questions that come after this, please feel free to reach out to your local teams or myself and Paul directly, and we can make sure those get to the right spots. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much, Ron. Thanks for having me, guys.